Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Okay, as soon as I find my headphones. All right.
So you find your head.
My head. If I find my... Okay, here we are. Hi. Hello there. I'm sorry. Tom will attest to the fact that I've been,
highlighting,
scrambling around like a crazy person trying to get this...
A teenager before a trig exam, highlighting her
Well, it is
textbook.
true that when highlighters came out, I don't think that they were out when I was in high school. I don't know.
I don't think so either.
Maybe by college. All I know is
by
that
college, yes.
when they were out, it was initially, it showed how bad I was at note-taking in that I would just try to write everything down that was being said. And then if you had a highlighter, you just...
Yeah, right.
You found that, what was the point? You just highlighted the whole damn thing.
Right. Well, it's funny because the magic markers were certainly out, but then I think all of a sudden with them coming in these bright Day-Glo colors, that was really more recent.
Maybe. I don't like those either. Those are distracting.
Well, yours is lime green, acid, chrome, or whatever.
You know, it's hard to find just a regular, ordinary old yellow. I mean, yellow seems to be the proper color.
Well, because it doesn't darken. When people use red or something, it darkens it. You can't even read the printed text.
Yeah. So, or blue. Please, why would you use a blue highlighter?
Well, if it was very light.
Or I can see using them for different things. I will do blue on this kind of a thing and pink on that, and that will help sort things out for me. Anyway, hi, how you doing? It's Thursday. It's the 12th. And Tom Sokolowski, as is his wont, is here on a Thursday. I'm sorry. I'll get my act together.
You're sorry that I'm here.
No, I'm not.
We have to see what the punctuation was. I'm sorry, comma.
I'm really sorry he's here. But, what can we do? And Gesundheit.
Oh, there's the Pope.
There's the Pope. He's such a...
Cute Pope.
He is. He's cute. We haven't had a cute Pope since John Paul.
Not John Paul. Since...
John
23rd. The
John 23rd was
he
cute.
Was smiling.
I mean, what's his name? John Paul.
The Polish one.
He was a handsome man.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, he started out handsome and macho, and then he got very old.
Aged terribly. I remember in the last year or so, he was just bent over, and you wondered if he was even
sick as a
sentient.
dog. It doesn't seem right to
that's why I have to give this other one credit. It was literally...
Well, for whatever reason.
For whatever reason.
And I give him credit for stepping aside so we get this much more enjoyable Pope.
Well, the other one, remember, he was called... What was his name? Ratzinger.
Yeah.
He was called the Rottweiler Pope by many.
Yeah. Well, he was, and this guy is just more human.
Yeah.
So there's just something about his face that is open and
But one thing we know that what the Catholic Church's official position, for example, is on homosexuality. But then when he made that comment of saying, who am I to judge?
It was
like saying, if anyone could judge, it would be the Pope.
Yeah, exactly. What do you mean? Who are you?
He said something to atheists yesterday. I think.
And this is about the fact that his second in command has opened up the door to the church looking at the possibility of allowing priests to marry So we'll see. I think my sense with this is it actually, rather than I saw it as something good, I thought, I think women in the church who are into a more progressive church should not be in favor of allowing married men in before women are allowed to serve as priests. It's always the women having to wait.
Oh, I see what you mean.
We will. No, you can't have. I mean, both of those have been absolutely taboo.
Yeah, right.
But if one's going to fall, of course it'll fall for the men, for the married men. So, sure, we can have married men. Well, heck, if you can have married men, then you can sure as hell have women. And the church's problems in terms of having enough priests would be gone in a second if they let women. I think
so. Well, it's interesting that this Parolin, is that his name? The second? Yeah, Parolin, Archbishop Parolin. But he says, celibacy is not an institution, but look, it is also true that you can discuss it because, as you say, this is not a dogma of the church. And that's right. He's making the point.
It's also not a dogma of the church that women can't be priests.
Yes.
I don't think.
I don't know. I know the point that, it's very funny. I remember as a kid, I don't know if it was myself or someone else asked of the nuns when I was going third grade or something, why can't women be priests? And no, not why can women. Why can't priests be married? And the nuns, I don't know, either they were nutcases, some of them, or just they were talking a little shit, and they said, well, just think, in the rectory, then there would be all these women fighting over what the color of the drapes were.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Well, this was 1950.
Yeah, I know. No. There it is, though.
But I mean, that's sort of silliness.
There it is. So, whatever.
The thing they always said, was that, there were never, who were the apostles? There were no girl apostles.
How do we know?
Well, that's right. Well, but also Judaic tradition. I mean, like on what's it called? The minyan, you can't have a woman.
Well, only the Orthodox say that.
Well, yeah, but only the Orthodox Catholics say this.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same thing, really.
Well, but most Jews are not Orthodox. So
no, well, that's true.
Women do count.
Although, wait with these Hasidim who breed like rabbits, the numbers may jump up.
Indeed.
No, it's funny when I drive around on a Saturday in Squirrel Hill, you see, the Hasidim actually come out of the temple, and there's always like 52 children with them.
I know.
And the wives are always pregnant.
Right. Well, because they like good Catholics,
yes,
do not practice birth control, and they believe in being fruitful and multiplying.
Multiply the earth, yes.
But, shoot. I hope she doesn't mind, and I should have asked her this, but I had dinner the other night with someone I hadn't seen in a quarter of a century.
Goodness. And
she told me something that I don't think I knew before. Maybe I did, but with my memory, it didn't seem like something I would forget. She grew up in a rectory. Now, how is that possible?
Well,
her father was
a priest.
A priest.
Oh my!
Well, but it
turns what? A Catholic priest?
A certain kind of Catholic priest.
That's like being a
Polish.
Little bit. No. There is a Polish Catholic Church. Yes.
So you know
but
of
that's
this.
But it's not. Well, I didn't know that they allowed married priests, but it's not recognized by the Catholic Church.
No, of course it's not.
Yeah. I've heard of it.
But there are congregations, and there are a lot of them around here. Because,
oh, really? I didn't know that.
No, because she's from around here.
I see.
And she grew up. Her father was married.
The father.
And was the father, and she was the only child of the priest, which is a weird way to grow up.
Really.
You can imagine. You grow up in the rectory?
Well, but then what about Episcopalians? I mean, they have children.
Right, but it's hard. I mean,
it's hard when it's against.
Are there any sons or daughters of ministers, priests, rabbis out there who would care to tell your sad stories. I think it would be a very, very difficult thing to be.
A ragamuffin in the rectory.
Well, just to be the child of them.
Well, I suppose, yes, because you'd be held to higher standards.
Yeah. And then, your father or mother would go out of their way not to appear to favor you.
Sure.
It would just
be... And you couldn't bring your boyfriend home to the rectory for a bonk.
Everybody would be staring at you all the time. Right. It just seems like it would be a very hard thing to be. Thank God my dad was not a rabbi. That's all I have to say.
Well, you remember that movie? This wasn't a kid, but that movie years and years ago with not Vincent Price, David Niven, called The Bishop's Wife, Loretta Young, and who was the angel? Was it Cary Grant?
Yes, it was Cary Grant.
Yeah.
I think that's a silly movie. I could watch it a million times because I'll watch anything Cary Grant.
But no, they were such. It was very funny. We're taking a sort of silly segue, or I am. But that period, which must have been like the 40s, I guess, early 40s. I can't remember.
Probably, yeah.
But those actors were so sort of quasi-British. They had these clipped accents. Oh my darling, And,
well, but.
Who talked that way?
But in the case of it was Niven, David Niven, and Cary Grant,
that's right,
and they are British.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
Loretta Young was.
Well, certainly not.
Was not. Okay. So we have before us. I have before me a piece I read this morning, and it's so
moved you.
It did. Well, the thing is, it poses some very interesting questions that are not easy to answer. And this is one of those cases when I find myself sort of outside the, most people's sense. Yesterday, of course, was 9/11, and Tom Junod, I think that's how he pronounced his name, Junod, who, by the way, was a dear friend of Fred Rogers after he wrote a piece on Fred Rogers. He apparently had been assigned by Esquire magazine to do a piece on Fred Rogers, and he said, "Are you kidding me?" And he came here to do the job, and this is years and years and years and years ago, he ended up just being blown away by Fred Rogers. And Tom Junod was at Fred's funeral. He has never, and actually the piece he ended up writing is an extraordinary piece. Extraordinary piece. And I recommend it to any and all. Well, he has written another piece. It's in Esquire, and it's called The Falling Man. And it starts with an iconic picture, which I do not recall ever seeing myself. And I don't know how much this little black and white rendition I have is going to show up, but it is of a man falling from one of the towers.
Well, as I said to you before the program, I remember that I was out of the country, which I think I've told that story, which I won't go into, but that people said in the first minutes when that was all happening, they ran a number of images. Where, remember one I saw at Repubs someplace with literally 5-6 people falling, and then after that time they cut that and they didn't show any of those individual bodies anymore because it was just thought to be too ghoulish, and it made it too personal.
Something. That's what we want to talk. Too something. Too ghoulish, too invasive.
Well, and also I think partly the fact that if you were blown up, whatever, but also I think it was like some of the absolute desperation that to get out of this burning building, you jump off of a 90th story, to, of course, your certain death.
What this article points out is it was not an unusual choice that day. It was not an unusual choice. We don't know that because we were not allowed to see.
Right, but you're saying that perhaps 200 people or whatever jumped.
No, they've tried to do counts.
Oh, okay.
The New York Times did a count. The medical examiner supposedly counted. Associated Press tried to do a count. They all came up with different numbers.
What magnitudes?
Magnitude up to 8% of all of the dead that day.
So that would have been like 170 or something. Because it was like 2,000 something.
It's a lot of people.
Wow.
And I don't know if you ever saw that amazing documentary by these, I think it was 2 French guys who were doing they were doing a documentary on the New York fire department or something.
Right.
And so when 9/11 happened, they ended up going with these guys they'd been chronicling, many of whom died that day. And in the documentary they put together, you do not see falling bodies, but you hear them.
Oh, I do. Yes, I do remember.
And there's just one part in the documentary where they do let you know that's what that sound is.
Was.
That bang.
Yeah, right.
Bang.
Right.
And bang, bang. And you don't see the bodies, but you hear the impact. And apparently, Junot says in this that they actually pulled some of the documentary's not true about just how many were falling.
Right.
They started to edit them out because it is so
ghoulish. Yeah.
You keep saying ghoulish. I don't.
I mean, when you hit the ground, that's certainly ghoulish.
Well, but we're not seeing that.
No.
You know, a body going that far, that fast, it reaches speeds of up to 150 miles an hour. When it hits, there's nothing left.
Well, and what's interesting, someone said about that, not about 9/11, but when you would jump, especially from something quite high, maybe only 30 floors, that because of the way it is, you probably die of suffocation before you hit. I don't know why that is, the way the lungs work or whatever, but
I don't know about that. They said generally a fall would take 10 seconds.
Woo, from that height.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it is.
That's a long time. So why apparently this man falling is such an extraordinary picture? Because most falling bodies are
flailing about.
And listen to Junot write about it. He says, he departs from this earth like an arrow. Although he has not chosen his fate, he appears to have, in his last instants of life, embraced it. If he were not falling, he might very well be flying. He appears relaxed.
Yeah, the image does look relaxed.
The image is very strange in that he's straight down, vertical, and one of his legs is sort of bent in a very sort of casual.
Almost a dance pose, or something.
It is a body that looks relaxed.
Well, you figure if one was fleeing burning fires and whatever.
He appears comfortable in the grip of unimaginable motion. He does not appear intimidated by gravity's suction or by what awaits him. His arms are by his side, his left leg bent at the knee almost casually. His white shirt is billowing free of his black pants, his black high tops still on his feet. In all the other pictures, the people who did what he did, who jumped, appear to be struggling against horrific discrepancies of scale. They are made puny by the backdrop of the towers, which loom like colossi, and then by the event itself. Some of them are shirtless, their shoes flying off as they flail and fall. They look confused. The man in the picture, by contrast, is perfectly vertical, and so is in accord with the lines of the buildings behind him. Everything. So he goes on. This is just, whatever. That picture did run in a lot of newspapers the next morning on December 12th.
And maybe for just the reason that he describes, that one that's more manic.
It was so beautiful.
Yeah,
it was such a beautiful picture.
Now, did they, since he seemed told, do they know who this fellow was?
No, he's never been identified.
Oh, okay.
Although there has been incredible efforts to identify him.
Oh, I bet.
He has not been. The photograph, the photographer who took him is a guy named Richard Drew. And he had been nearby, somewhere near Battery Park, and he was shooting a fashion show when somebody told him that these planes had crashed, and he went tearing down to this. Now, Richard Drew, it should be pointed out, had been a photographer for a long, long time, for decades. And he was 21 years old when he was in Los Angeles on the job at a hotel. He was standing right behind Bobby Kennedy.
Oh, that's what you were going to say. When
Bobby Kennedy was shot in the head.
It was the kitchen.
And in fact, this photographer's shirt and jacket were spattered with Kennedy's blood. He jumped on a table. He shot the picture that is iconic of Kennedy lying there, his eyes open and staring, and then of Ethel crouching over him. He has preserved the jacket. But he, in this case, was doing his job as well. What's interesting is the picture of Kennedy lying there. His seconds, but his eyes are still open. His life is ebbing out of him. That was carried over and over. We know that picture. How is that picture different? I mean, if we can't do the individual, then or would that picture of Robert Kennedy lying on that hotel kitchen floor dying, would that picture be run today? Were we worse people in 1968?
No, well, what I was going to say,
stronger?
I think my first impulse was to say, here was a public figure, and public figures must be, in inverted commas, open to public scrutiny, even under the moments of the greatest terror or ignominy. Where I think one of the things I see, and I haven't read the whole article by any means, but this is sort of every man. And when you're not, that was part of the thing. I think that both the people who were the victims and the heroes, the first, what are they called? The people who got their first
responders.
First responders. I couldn't remember the term. They were heroes, but again, who knows their names? And that's when you sort of think of this person as the falling man. Is that like the fallen man in terms of...
But one would think that in some ways that falling man should have been... it's so indicative of the horror of that day.
Of course.
That could be one of the iconic pictures. Now, what some people... So I said that a lot of newspapers ran that
photograph.
But they were, to a paper, deluged by furious readers who said things like that you were invading his privacy, you were stripping him of his dignity, you are exploiting his death, you are turning tragedy into leering pornography, and most of all, that what if somebody has to know that man and they are going to see that picture of him hurtling to his death? Well, in fact,
you can't recognize.
They tried very hard. They've narrowed it down. He was a food service worker because
it looks like from here now.
You can't tell. From
but he looks like he's African American.
No, he's dark skinned.
Yeah,
and he's very tall.
Yeah.
And no, there were a lot of identifying things that they did try to find him, but never quite could. But I mean, again, I ask the question. Why were the picture of Robert Kennedy one, the little Vietnamese girl who's running toward the camera because she's naked, her clothes having been burned off in a napalm attack.
The guy, Eddie, what's his name? The guy shooting the police sergeant shooting the Viet Cong.
All of those kinds of things. So those are. Often the iconic pictures are the ones that are so appalling. The one that won the Pulitzer Prize recently is a picture I still have trouble looking at, but it's a picture of a little African child sitting.
With the buzzard.
And this huge buzzard, bigger than the child, just sitting behind it.
Waiting for it to die.
Waiting.
Oh, it's...
And
well, you know,
that
story about
picture,
that. Do you know about that?
Yes, and that photographer ended up committing suicide.
A friend who's a very good and very famous artist did a piece on that. And it's extraordinary because, the guy couldn't take it. That everyone said, because the whole point was, did he ever go and intervene to help the girl or shoot the bird or get away? And that was this whole argument of, does someone who is a documentary photographer intervene in history, no matter how horrible?
Well, that's one of those ethical questions that I know photographers struggle with all the time. But the resistance to these images of people falling to their deaths is fascinated me at the time and still does.
Well, maybe you're right about maybe either through our own sensitivities, right or not. Because if you think back even earlier, what was the guy's name now? Oh, I'll think of it. Who was very famous for the police would call him because he paid them off, that whenever they
well, this was in New York.
It'll come to me. His initials, Ouija. And he paid them off, and sometimes they even staged them to look them horrible. But these were mob killings with pools of blood, and he became famous for these.
But to me, that's different. I don't give a damn. This is something so huge. I'm talking about huge events.
Well, but the buzzard wasn't a huge event.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't.
Yes, it was.
That bird and that girl, that wasn't a huge event.
Oh, yes, it was.
How?
Because the little child was starving because of a huge event taking place around her.
I see what you're saying. Okay, fine.
Famine in Africa.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
Right. No, so it wins a Pulitzer Prize because this
was just such a global image.
This tells the story of this is what happens.
True synecdoche. That term, where a small thing stands for the larger. I think is it part of the fact that the Bush administration during all the Iraq stuff and that
wouldn't let the coffins be
or really grim things shown in the streets.
We haven't done that since
Bush.
Well, I don't know.
I think it was really.
I'm not sure. But when they started managing media, it was like you can only show our troops, doing heroic things. Well,
I remember you probably did too growing up and watching. Well, at the time, I guess it was like 6:30, 5:30 in the Midwest. Well, you grew up in the Midwest too. Having dinner and having Walter Cronkite on, and just those cameras were there in Vietnam for the most intimate, and seeing people gurgling blood, and they were horrific.
Well, it helped to turn
the war because
turn the tide. And this during when 9/11 was happening, Drew, the guy who took that picture, was taking more pictures, and the guy who was second in command of the fire department, a guy named Bill Feehan, saw him and didn't say it to him. He chased a bystander who was with a video camera taking events. He, second in command of the fire department, goes after this guy who's taking pictures and screams at him, "Don't you have any human decency?" Now, that's interesting, again, because people were dying. Why is it whatever? And the assumption is that it's somehow pornographic, that it's voyeuristic.
Well, the question is, if you were...
We were all voyeurs that day. We were all staring open mouth.
Right. But the point was, we weren't doing it to say, like, hey, let's go home and let's have popcorn and watch people fall.
Well, I don't know that the person that he screamed at was doing that either. This was an extraordinarily historic moment, which he was cataloging.
Yeah,
the sad thing is that Bill Feehan, the guy who screamed at him, "Don't you have any human decency," was dead within a half hour. Now, the thing is, it is like by consensus, those pictures of falling people, no one asked me, but they became taboo. They are the only images of that day that we Americans all agree we will not look.
Or might we look a generation
Well, here's
later?
What this guy says. In a nation, that's an interesting point, and I want to bring it up.
Because if you weren't part of it, in a sense.
In a nation of voyeurs, which we are, the desire to face the most disturbing aspects of our most disturbing day somehow all of a sudden is ascribed to voyeurism, as though the experience of these people who chose to jump, instead of being central to the horror of that day, became tangential to it because we refused to acknowledge it. And you could argue that those were people who were in a situation where they were going to die. They took the one last thing they could do where they could have control.
Very well put, yeah.
And in some ways, those are all heroic people, if you ask me, jumping. But we've made it into something that's somehow obscene. You cannot look.
Well, because maybe the whole notion is it's not so much that we abhor their action, but that by doing it and having images such as the falling man, which although one can't identify him, one can begin to piece together what he was or whatever, is that then it personalizes it. If you look at it like a world war,
but you pointed out out of microphone range before the show started, that the power of the individual to that Schenectady you're talking
about.
I can't say it, but that.
Can you say Connecticut? Can you say Schenectady?
I can say Schenectady, but Schenectady.
Yeah, what did I say that was so brilliant?
That was so brilliant was, it's exactly that. It's the one man standing in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square.
Right.
That's the iconic photo. Right. Why are the iconic photos? And I have often been told that, something like take the Holocaust, which you cannot get your head around.
No, it's too large to encompass.
You get your head around it by focusing on one.
Well, Anne Frank.
Or if you go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, you are given
those passports.
A passport, which is a passport of someone who was in the Holocaust.
Some of whom survived.
Some of whom survived and some of whom didn't. But you go through the entire thing with this one person, and you don't know.
Until the end.
If you're going to make it out, if that person And this brings so much more.
Well, I think it allows us to comprehend, if that's the right word, something of such enormity. I mean, you could be sad for Anne Frank, and particularly because a young child didn't have a chance to live in that book, no matter how sort of romanticized it's become. But you can then, but just to think of millions of people being gassed, I mean, how do you, if you're at one scintilla human, I mean, how can you even comprehend that?
Well, and this was brought out in one of the women who lost her husband, and happened to be a friend of the, we haven't even gotten to him, this artist. She said that shortly before 9/11, she and her husband, who was to die on 9/11, went and visited Auschwitz. And she said, at Auschwitz, you see, these rooms filled with eyeglasses,
suitcases,
rooms
hair.
Filled with shoes, with teeth, with all of this. Because one thing those Nazis knew how to do is take every last aspect of a human being.
Because there was going to be a museum, the Museum of the Dead Race, which they never built. But you kill everyone off, and then you say, let's make a museum to it. And it's so sick.
But she pointed out that she did not think that people would be willing or able to look at that contemporaneously, that we can only look at that kind of horror because we're generations removed. But you know what? Again, that's not true, because there are pictures. Those pictures, when they liberated the camps, appeared in newspapers all over the world. And the piles of bodies and the bulldozers just sort of like moving the bodies.
But, it's interesting, as you know, since you've been there, the brilliant thing they do, you go up in this elevator, the helicopter takes you to the top, and then you sort of work yourself down. And what you hear, you get in the elevator, and you stand the way one stands in the elevator, looking at the closed door, and this tape comes on, and it's this photographer, again, photography, and he says, and we were all triumphant because the war was over, and then we knew we had to go to these camps. And he said, and then we got there, and we stood in front of the gates, and then you turn, and the back of the elevator has become what looks like a wooden gate at Auschwitz. And the door opens, and what you see is a close-up photo, life-size, of these people in the striped costumes, terribly emaciated, just looking as if they were cadavers. And it's sort of, and it's this photography making it real. And then you start the story, but it's that sort of like pa-bump, and it hits you, and like how. And he says, Wien did not believe something like this could exist. I mean, it was brilliantly done.
Well, so my question remains: why the falling people have been erased? Why have the falling people been erased? And I do not agree with it at all. We got to get a break in here. We'll be back.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. This week, 50% off tickets to the City Theater's Tony Award-winning play, Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike. Supplies are limited. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. bergbargains.com.
Les Ludwig, your independent, self-financed, clean candidate for mayor of Pittsburgh. You've heard the saying, same old. If we don't change what we're doing, we can only expect the same results. Let's look at what the Democratic Party leadership of your lifetime is asking you to do on Election Day. They want you to forget that they and Ravenstall have not lived up to minority contracts and the jobs involved in it. If government promises work and jobs and wants to leave it for the next candidate, will it ever get done? How can we trust Peduto and especially the leadership when they continue to act this way? Are they hiding something worse than Harper's misdeeds? Vote November 5th and remember, same old. Embrace change and work willingly with it. Think outside the party's box. Make Les Ludwig your mayor and join his march to clean government and keeping promises.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okay, so I'm almost done with this because I just think this is fascinating. This brings us to the artist I alluded to, a guy named Eric Fischel. And
who, by the way, is a wonderful painter, sort of got his start in the 1980s and actually just wrote his biography.
But a
really interesting artist.
One of his friends had been trapped on the 106th floor of the North Tower and died that day. He was doing a sculpture. He had thought of using the photographs that he had seen of falling people as what the sculpture would convey. And he worked 9 months and came up with its larger than life-size bronze, which he called Tumbling Woman. And the day after it was exhibited at Rockefeller Center, all hell broke loose. And this is a sculpture of it says Tumbling Woman.
And it was a woman, so it wasn't even this guy.
Yeah. And the New York Post called it a shameful art attack. You have no right to ambush grieving New Yorkers with this distillation of their own sadness. That's exactly what art is supposed to do.
Yes, you're right.
That's exactly what art is supposed to do. How does that become a shameful attack? That is art. It blows me away. Anyway, everybody caved. The trustees of the Museum of Modern Art, a trustee, Jerry Spire, who runs Rockefeller Center, after 1 week, he pulled the whole, everything was gone.
I remember that.
Everything was gone. And here's what the artist, Fischel, said. I was trying to say something about the way we all feel. But people thought I was trying to say something about the way they feel. That I was trying to take away something only they could possess.
The decedents.
Right. They thought, well, no, I think just they didn't want anybody trying to form that day into this one image. It wasn't that image. It wasn't the image they wanted.
Like it was creating perhaps a symbol.
Right, and he says this. They thought I was trying to say something about the people they had lost. That image is not my father. You didn't even know my father. How dare you try telling me how I feel about my father? And he ended up saying, I was ashamed to have added to anybody's pain. But none of that mattered, and that certainly wasn't his intent. Now,
can I make a comment on that? Two comments, actually. One, I saw the piece. And I didn't think it was that powerful. I mean, Eric is a wonderful painter. I don't think he's a great sculptor, but I didn't think that powerful. But what's very interesting when you mention a friend of his died, also a friend of mine, someone who worked for me, because on the 106th floor, this was the time, remember, when there was a slight downturn, well, more than a slight downturn in the economy. And so a number of the floors in that tower were empty because one of these Fortune 500 companies, et cetera, were downsizing, what have you. So the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, I believe they were the ones, offered studio space on those floors because the higher up you were, the more expensive.
So there were artists up there. Yeah.
And a friend who worked, Michael Richards, lovely young African-American guy. He worked for me for 5 years at the Gray Art Gallery. Was sexy, wonderful guy. And women loved him. And he was beginning really to build a career of interesting sculpture dealing with African American issues. And he was having a show in the next week or two, so he was like on deadline, if you will. And they weren't supposed to sleep overnight, but he did. And then this happened, 10 minutes to 9 or something. And he was the second body that was found. But luckily for family and whatever, and friends, he was found pretty much intact. But the first person they found was that priest who ministered. He was thought to be the...
Father Michael Judge.
Yeah, Father Michael Judge, right.
And that's pointed out, too. There's an iconic photo of Father Judge.
Being carried, I remember,
almost like a
internment.
It was so beautiful. Now, that photo, that's okay, and he's identified. It's just, I still don't think this question has been answered.
Well, I really think it has. I think when you said that, I think something's very interesting about that is, I think it has something to do with everything you've said about, not taking our pain and trying to make it public because we never can. But maybe something...
That's what an artist does.
No. Yeah, not that part. But I mean, emotionally. Don't tell me how I should feel about my mother's death. She had a nice death. She wasn't in pain. Don't tell me. I think it has something to do with taking your own life.
Yes.
That there's a kind of shame, like we shouldn't commit suicide, even under this most horrific of. I'm sure that's part of it. They said that there was a woman. In this article says that there was a woman that he heard when he was taking the photos, screaming as people were jumping. Oh my God! Pray for their souls! Pray for their souls! Pray for their souls! So. There was this sense that not because they died,
were committing
suicide. Right, exactly.
And so some of the concern, I guess, with the fall is that some people think if you kill yourself, but that's a specific religious.
Well, it's a religious thing, but don't you think most people feel that suicide is one of the most horrible things?
I just said in this case, though, and I'll go to the mat with it.
Yeah.
It was an extraordinarily courageous thing to do. It was to take control. Okay, I'm going to die. I'm doing it my way, on my time. I'm going now. I'm not going to burn. I'm not going to die from smoke.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
I'm going to have one last moment. I'm going to fill my lungs with air for the last 10 seconds. I'm going out. I'm going down.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they say because. For some reason, it's been decided we cannot handle the fact that hundreds of people made that choice. it's been erased from the record, and I don't.
Even under the ancient Romans, if you committed suicide, what you were supposed to your people who were your
descendants, your family.
We're supposed to cut off the hand that you used to commit suicide. Otherwise, you couldn't go into the whatever the Greeks, the Romans called the hereafter or heaven, what have you. One other footnote to this: Father Judge Michael Judge. I met him once, much before, and it was in the context because he was a not so very closeted gay man.
Yes.
And I remember there was a big piece then afterwards in New York Magazine about him.
Yes.
But he was beloved.
Just beloved by the fire department.
And that's why he went there.
So let me I'm going to read one last paragraph here, and I'll leave you with whatever
I'm going to look
thoughts.
at this article.
Okay, so he again said that those pictures that came out of the death camps of Europe were treated at the time, and still are, as essential acts of witness. Without particular regard to the sensitivities of those who appeared in them or the surviving families of the dead. Right. They were shown as Richard Drew's photograph of the just assassinated Robert Kennedy were shown. They were shown as the photograph of Ethel Kennedy pleading with photographers not to take pictures were shown. They were shown as the photograph of the little Vietnamese girl running naked after a napalm attack was shown. They were shown as the photograph of Father Michael Judge, graphically and unmistakably dead, was shown and accepted as a kind of testament. They were shown as everything is shown, for like the lens of a camera, history is a force that does not discriminate. Mm-hmm. What distinguishes the pictures of the jumpers from the pictures that have come before us is that we Americans are being asked to discriminate on their behalf. What distinguishes them historically is that we, as patriotic Americans, have agreed not to look at them. Dozens, scores, hundreds of people died by leaping from those burning buildings. And we have somehow taken it upon ourselves to deem their deaths unworthy of witness, because we have somehow deemed the act of witness in this one regard unworthy of us.
Well, it's something it's beautifully written.
He's an incredible writer.
Oh, it's beautiful. I really want to read the whole article. But what struck me there is I think I was just saying to Lynn before the break, during the break rather, that why is it that we have not, as this was such an event in our history and will forever be, that we've not made it into a Memorial Day, an Armistice Day, etc., where we think of the dying. And I think what was really coming to the fore in my mind when you were reading that was the fact that maybe, given this notion in our society that suicide is wrong, did this somehow show us to be the victims? In other words, Father Judge, all those firemen, the people who ran them, they died in duty. And the thing that was so horrible about 9/11, I think really more than the deaths, was the fact that it was the first time on our soil, I mean, other than Pearl Harbor, and as Lynn said, it wasn't a state
well,
yet.
And other domestic terror like Oklahoma City happened before, where children and regular people were
but not in such a. But this was somehow the first time that on our land America was caught with its pants down, so to speak, and somehow we want to be seen as heroic. We fought to the last. And if you believe that suicide is cowardly, which I don't, and you don't either, that's why we don't want to see it. Because America has always been there with its trenchant or its gun or its...
Well, nothing makes us look like we're caught with it than those buildings burning or
just collapsing. Oh, that was,
there are so many powerful images that day. But because the toll was so huge, it seems that these single photos, that falling man, are just
maybe it's also
incredibly powerful.
That could be me. You can't think of yourself, but like that could be me. And I think it poses for us the notion, what would I have done?
Maybe. But I want to...
Do we want to even think about that?
Okay, and then maybe that's it. I just want to leave. I do not understand that taboo, and in fact, it makes us turn our back on all of those people who chose that. Now, as if what they did, it's the taboo makes what they did shameful.
Yeah, right.
When
now,
in fact,
were they able to identify others who jumped, or does he go into that?
No, there are no other pictures where people specifically were. Loved ones can maybe, if they zeroed in, and there's points where some woman saw there were a bunch of people from that Cantor Fitzgerald, right. And they were like there was a picture, and you could see all these people, I guess, out on a ledge, sort of. I don't know what that picture is, but some woman whose 2 sons were there thought she saw in the body language of one of them that it was her son. And she called the paper and said, I need you to enlarge this. I need to see this. And yes, indeed, there was her son, there was her other son behind him. For her, that gave her
hope.
She liked that they were together. She said, I'm so glad that they didn't, whatever. And some people wouldn't want to see whatever. But I don't like when people tell me that something powerful is something I'm not allowed to see.
Yeah, right.
I don't like that kind of just assumption of censorship.
No, right, I agree with you.
And I've never comprehended why that, and I think this piece, Tom Juneau, Esquire Mag, unbelievably well written, as everything he does is. And, so anyway, thank you. I thought you'd be the perfect guy to talk to about it because, in fact, it's art.
Oh, no, it is.
It's art and it's history and it's all those things. And somehow we have decided it's obscene. And I think that's an outrage to that man and all the others who died. All righty. I said my piece then. Second break and we'll be back.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
This week's Pittsburgh City Paper annual Fall Arts Preview is available now. Pick up one today for an in-depth look and an exciting season of arts and culture in the Burgh. Plus Graham Nash, Rancid, The Lion King, and news of the weird. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone with GPS-enabled listings at citypapermobile.com.
Come to Little's for all of your back-to-school needs. Little's has everything for all ages to stay in style for this upcoming school season. Check out the large selection from Doc Marten, Steve Madden, UGG, Clarks, Lely Kelly, New Balance, and much, much more. Don't forget to come visit this season's colorful handbag selection as well. Little Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
When is grave digging hilarious? When it comes from the madcap mind of Martine McDonough, writer of In Bruges and The Lieutenant of Inishmore. Pick Theatre presents A Skull in Connemara, with Mick, the widow gravedigger, Martine, his numbskull assistant, Mary Johnny, the pochine-swilling granny, and Thomas, the detective wannabe. You'll laugh your own skull off at this show, playing September 12th through 28th. Visit picktheatre.org or call 412-561-6000 for tickets.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen live at pghcitypaper.com.
Oh, yeah, look at this. Oh, I was just looking at some comments that people had left the article, and here's somebody who just absolutely sees it like me. I believe that we, by calling this suicide, does injustice to those who I feel did a heroic final action against the enemy. Those who decided to leave the building, which was choking them with poisonous gas and searing heat, chose to be the master of their own life and not following the plan they had no decision in. They chose to take their lives back from the enemy and the bragging rights that the enemy would surely use. These people decided to heroically leave an empty legacy to Al-Qaeda by choosing their own right of life and death. They were as much a hero as those who fought on the plane to get back control, and those who ran into burning buildings to save them. Totally gets it. Totally gets it. That's it.
No, she's absolutely right.
Okay. We haven't said boo about Vladimir Putin's op-ed in the New York Times. Did you see it?
No, I didn't read the Times yet.
Well, it's very
about Syria, of course.
Yes, and it's titled "A Plea for Caution from Russia." There's something
Bring out the violin.
Yeah, but there's something a little off-putting about Vladimir Putin lecturing us. I really have.
I love when you say Putin. It reminds me when the first Bush would always refer as Saddam Hussein.
Yes, Saddam Hussein. Which is actually brilliant.
Well, you know what it was? Because it was, in a way, not even giving those people the dignity of how their name is
exactly
pronounced.
Right. Exactly. I got a kick out of that. But
what does Mr. Putin say?
Oh, it's too complicated. But
Now, was this written before this?
No, it's written since. It's written
about
since,
this whole business of letting them.
Yeah. It's written since the president's speech, and he goes on to talk about how great the United Nations is, and we will harm it if we act, unilaterally. And I mean, a lot of
but
what
of course,
he says,
Russia and China are the two that
that often
veto
do.
on the Security Council.
But he also says that vetoes work. And the United States would not want that veto to go away, which is also true. And he jumps on us for our so-called exceptionalism, which I do agree with him about. But there's something about, I'm sorry, Vladimir Putin is one of those people that is very easy to dislike. And
he steals football rings.
No, he's just... and he does.
He really is a thug.
He I don't know. The White House has said that they appreciate much of what he has said in this op-ed piece, but somehow being lectured to by Vladimir Putin
in our newspaper of record.
Yeah.
If it was Izvestia, that'd be one thing, but in our newspaper of record.
Well, he absolutely. And then listen to this, just one paragraph. No one doubts that poison gas was used in Syria. But there is every reason to believe it was used not by the Syrian army, but by opposition forces.
I've heard that, yeah.
To provoke intervention by their powerful foreign patrons. Reports that militants are preparing another such attack, this time against Israel, cannot be ignored. Well, I don't know of many people who agree that there is any way that the opposition could have carried out
That's what I've read,
this attack. So that is just extraordinarily disingenuous, as is Mr. Putin's concern for Israel.
Yes, right.
And it's not like he doesn't have a case to be made here. He's saying we need to go by international law.
So he becomes the bigger.
Not off by, not the United States not acting on its own. But listen to the last paragraph. This is Vladimir Putin writing, talking to you.
Oh, please.
Mr. and Mrs. America. My working and personal relationship with President Obama is marked by growing trust.
That's
the first I heard of that.
Yes.
Did you ever hear that before?
No, it's been
I'm sure Obama reading that this morning said,
Must have coughed.
What? Okay, by growing trust. I appreciate this. I carefully studied his address to the nation on Tuesday. And I would rather disagree with a case he made on American exceptionalism, stating that the United States policy is what makes American different. It's what makes us exceptional. And then Putin goes on to say, it is extremely dangerous to encourage people to see themselves as exceptional. I agree.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Whatever the motivation. There are big countries and small countries, rich and poor, those with long democratic traditions and those still finding their way to democracy. Their policies differ too. We are all different. But when we ask for the Lord's blessings, we must not forget that God created us equal. That's how Putin ends, throwing us, created us equal.
Well, I think that's a response to, always presidents. And God bless people.
Yeah,
and God bless America.
But the Russians are not known for invoking God.
Well, but I think that's what he's talking about, is that we get so sort of soppy about it. Maybe. Like if the president didn't end with God bless America, I don't care who it is, there'd be wrath the next day. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, have you talked about, or has anyone mentioned, how much of all this latest fandango do you think came from that sort of off-the-cuff remark that Kerry made, and all of a sudden, whoa, policy changes?
No, I think it all came from there.
And I just wonder if
he was
in the... Yeah, but was that intentional?
We don't know.
He,
I said yesterday that if it was intentional...
If it was Biden, we know it was unintentional.
No, if it was intentional, I think he was a very, very good actor because it certainly appeared
off the cuff,
not to be. And in the few moments we have left, I just want to take a few shots at the Republicans.
You?
Yeah. Do you know that, we are now the country again. I know it's deja vu. We get so sick of it. In 3 weeks,
yes,
we will not have the money to pay our bills.
All right.
Again.
Yeah,
Again. So unless Congress acts, like right now, the government will shut down at the end of this month. The House is saying it will not act. It will not, extend the debt ceiling unless, it's not even the debt ceiling, I don't think, unless Obamacare is defunded. Well, it's beyond belief.
Beyond belief is right.
Obamacare was passed by the Congress of the United States.
The Congress.
Signed into law, is well on its way to implementation. Many parts of it already have been implemented. Yeah. They don't know that they refuse to accept the will of the government. When the government doesn't do exactly what they want, they simply refuse to accept it. They
signed the paper.
They didn't accept that Clinton was a legitimate president because they didn't vote for him, and so they spent 8 years.
Obama was born
8 years trying to delegitimize. We see the same with Obama. It is insane. You cannot run a government like this. No. Demanding a vote on the measure has been postponed because, as usual, the Republican leadership has no control over these anarchists, and because they are demanding that any deal to fund the government past September 30th must include a provision to cut off funding for the Health Care Act. I find these people disgusting.
I agree.
Just disgusting. Henry. Lynn, sorry, but as I read the Putin op-ed piece, I was thinking, I wish Obama had written this instead. I thought it was spot on, and his religious references caught me off guard, indeed. By the end of the piece, I was ready to vote him into the White House. Don't get crazy.
Henri.
He was, listen, first of all.
It was very cleverly written.
He's playing us.
Yeah, of course.
Right? He's playing us.
And he didn't write that.
And damn well bet you he didn't write it.
He had the
people who knew
Tom
what
Joad
Americans want. Yeah,
Russia
whatever.
Write it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It was a well-written
Well, no, and
piece,
it's just I was going to ask you as we go off. What did you think? I was not terribly impressed by Mr. Obama's speech.
I liked his speech.
You did?
Yeah, but I
just thought it was, I don't know, especially in the light of this
neither here nor there, but it had to be neither here nor there. What was he going to do? He was...
Well, there was nothing that in my mind would tell me as a reasonably sentient person, or, the great unwashed, the passion of why we have to do this, except that this exceptional business. But I don't know. That's why I found it was just a little unimpressive.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. All right. That's it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
As usual, thank you, guys. Tomorrow we'll have Mr. Potter in house. And have a great day. And go Bucks and welcome home.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.